Hi, I'm Lorne Grieger. I'm an agricultural engineer with PAMI. Today, I want to talk about the work that PAMI has done studying straight cut canola and specifically looking at pre-harvest aids and the impact at harvest time. The objectives of the project were really to understand what the impacts are in terms of the overall harvest losses, both environmental as well as from the combine, the impact on combine performance itself, but also the characteristics of the seed, as well as the economics that go with using any particular type of field process. Want to say thank you to our funders, Growing Forward 2 initiative, along with our industry partners that made this work possible over the 2 years that it was performed. This project was a field scale trial where we performed and laid out plots in a quarter section field and then marked out various segments of the field to allow for the plots to be applied. The field was seeded in 2016 with an L140P and in 2017 with 233P. We used two different varieties over the 2 different years, but the process was consistent where we had a plot for naturally ripened canola as well as swath, and then plots that were sprayed with a glyphosate, Reglone, or heat and glyphosate mixture. In order to understand what the impact was on the combine performance, we took a full swath header with looking at to understand what the impact was for losses as well as impact on combine performance. When we're looking at losses, there's two different types. One was the environmental losses, where we put loss trays inside the standing canola. We installed the loss trays at the time when the canola swath and then kept them in until whenever the plots were harvested. The second part to this was looking at the losses during the combining of the plots and what the losses were coming off the back end of both total losses. So that would include separator as well as a cleaning system. One of the key things that we wanted to highlight was the application rates and how the product was applied, and making sure that we used a consistent rate of water, as well as making sure that the pressure and ground speed were within appropriate levels in order to get a good crop canopy penetration. And this is the application details for the 2016 trials. One of the key things that we wanted to understand was the weather conditions or ambient conditions at the time in order to look at the context of how the products performed. In this case, in 2016, we did our initial swath and plots on the 22nd of August, and then sprayed heat and glyphosate the 24th. The sprayed Reglone on the 28th of August, and then started harvesting 5 days later on September 3rd. And from there, continued on with the plots that were harvested later at the end or mid-September with the heat and glyphosate, and then naturally ripened at the end. One of the things that we looked at was the temperature as well as wind speeds with the impacts that they potentially had, noting that there was some precipitation in between when the Reglone plots were harvested compared to the remaining plots. So again, the temperatures were relatively, I would say, typical for this time of year, around the 15 degrees Celsius mark. So again, the impact of ambient conditions can have a overall effect on what the plots were looking like. In terms of the crop canopy at time of harvest, this is the two different plots, one being the Reglone on the left, looking at the crop canopy and stalk condition compared to the heat and glyphosate, which was combined on September 14th. Again, noting that there was a difference in terms of the overall condition of the plot that and had an impact on the combine performance as a whole. And the last one being the naturally ripened for this particular trial. Again, quite a difference when you're looking at that date for naturally ripened compared to the plot that was applied with heat and glyphosate. In 2017, it was quite a different story in terms of the conditions that we had. 2017 was a hot, dry fall. And one of the things that we did note was the temperature increase when you're looking at the overall temperatures that we saw upper in 20s and up to mid 20s at times. Again, some of the impacts that had, though, when you looked at when the first plot was harvested and the plots were applied with glyphosate as well as the Reglone, was the really tight grouping in terms of the overall plots And because of the hot, dry conditions that we had and relatively high wind speeds, keeping the ground dry and the crop canopy dry, all the plots were harvested within 2-3 days of each other. So again, the conditions at the time impacted the ambient conditions, impacted what the plots were doing. And looking at photos in terms of the condition for harvesting with the swath compared to the rugloan, and then also the glyphosate heat and glyphosate plots on the 29th. Again, because of the hot, dry conditions, the crop canopy was quite similar when you look at the overall condition of the canopy at the time. What does this mean in terms of the overall impact on combine performance? Well, one thing we wanted to look at when we were setting the machine was the impact on engine load, as well as the bushel per liter, or in terms of what would that harvest efficiency look like, and looking at the 2 different years. In 2016, again, saw quite a difference in terms of the swath versus the heat and glyphosate naturally ripened compared to the ragloan, which is closer in terms of the overall efficiencies. And then looking at 2017, because of the tight grouping, saw quite a tight grouping in terms of the overall combine efficiency, in terms of a bushel per liter performance for the plots that were treated with a pre-harvest aid compared to the swath. So what were the net results? Well, we didn't see any statistical difference on seed characteristics such as oil content, seed size, dockage, green seed, standing losses, yield, and engine speed in 2016. The one difference being the difference that we saw in terms of the seed side in 2017. But otherwise, conditions were consistent, and we saw the same type of effect with the treatments that were applied for this particular project. In conclusion, pre-harvest aids can have an impact, but it really depends on the year, the ambient conditions, the canola stand itself. We'll note, though, this is 2 years of data and really needs additional study to get a good trend in terms of what the long-term and trend can be in various types of ambient conditions and growing seasons. We'll also note, too, this was based on pod shatter reduction varieties and can't necessarily be extrapolated to those that don't have that type of a genetic to hold the seed in the pod. With that, wanted to say thank you and allowing me to share with the results of our particular project. All this information is summarized on our PAMI website, pami.ca, under our publications page and combine research, along with other research work that we've done, including looking at the 2019 harvest losses and understanding what the average loss is across the prairies when surveying producers at this time. Thank you.